Hello, welcome to another episode of What the Flock. So I'm excited about all of our episodes, but I'm really excited about today's because I know I'm going to learn a ton. But as usual, I'm going to start out with our quote of the day. But today, it's not a quote. It's actually song lyrics from one of my favorite U2 songs. Somebody stepped inside your soul. Somebody stepped inside your soul. Little by little, they robbed and stole till somebody else was in control. God knows it's not easy, taking on the shape of someone else's pain. God, now you can see me. I'm naked, but I'm not afraid. My body's sacred, and I'm not ashamed. That's a song called The Troubles by U2.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it?
That's great.
So I'm going to just, not hesitate here and just pass the ball over to the awesome Hoyt to take over.
Thank you. And I'm very happy to have a very special guest here, Debora Giannone Moon.
Thank you.
And she's kind of for some of you might recognize her from the TV show Seduced.
Yes.
That she was part of the girls, involved with the NXIVM cult, and Debora is an actress and a comedian and an artist.
Wow.
Yes, Am I leaving anything out?
A writer? Right now I don't know who I am, to be honest. I'm just finding myself. That's really the truth.
Right.
But yes, I do love acting and writing and art, and I will always do that. But it's more shaping into a new thing, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I've discovered in my so-called aftermath, and it was one of the things that was recommended, was to kind of embrace the creative arts.
Yes.
Because, you come out of these situations, you've been traumatized on some level, right? And a lot of times your self-esteem has been diminished because of the involvement in these groups. And, what they recommended was the creative arts is a way to recognize that we have abilities that allow us to be expressed in ways that we wouldn't imagine until we do it, and that lens that we're carrying, which is part of it, is this experience that we're kind of maybe carrying a little shame around, whatever, can actually be I like to say the gasoline for the creative engine, And so I encourage you to pursue all those creative stuff, because I know I was looking at, you sent me, I think, a picture of one of your art pieces.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I started that in the pandemic, actually, 5 months ago. I just wanted some color, because everything seemed so dark and gray. And so I always wanted to paint. Yeah. Actually, I just thought, I'm going to do that when, I booked a TV show or whatever.
Right.
And I realized, why? Why am I waiting for permission, basically. So I started painting. I really love it. So now I'm just putting it on different things, on pillows, on blankets, and still writing. I'm writing.
Great.
But,
well, that's I found one of the most constructive things to do. But I want to go back to the beginning, and this, it's kind of nice to. Everyone wants to know kind of how it starts, but it's also kind of nice to know kind of where you were and what you were thinking in your life when this even crossed. I always refer to it as the perfect storm. We're at a place in our life, and then certain things fall in place, and then this event starts to happen, which takes our life on this new tangent. So, in your own words, I'd love to kind of hear where you were, what you were kind of thinking, and then how this kind of thing came about.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Here we go.
To use one word, it was just really a place of complete isolation, I think, and loneliness, because I'm from Europe and I moved here for acting specifically, and it was going well, somewhat not. And I was, 4 years out of acting school, and I made some connections, but nothing. I would always come close to a big hit, and I wouldn't book it. And it would just tear me down, to be honest. I would think, I'm not good enough, and it would trigger all of my kind of insecurities. And you're shit. Honestly, I'm not going to lie. Everybody has their shit. So, and I was really, really in a bad place, really sad. Really, I felt helpless and powerless, I think, and overwhelmed, because I think I know it was the first time where I lived completely by myself in a foreign city. My boyfriend, who moved with me, we broke up and he moved back. So,
oh wow, yeah.
Are we?
No, it's okay.
So my boyfriend who moved with me moved back, and I lived by myself and trying to make ends meet in LA, and especially combining it with an acting career, it was just a lot. And for the first time, I was really exposed to myself, with everything that happened in my childhood. I had a very traumatic childhood. And it just all came bubbling up like a volcano. And I was just really, really depressed and down. And my friend at the time was taking classes in ESP, and he kept saying, like, this is the greatest thing. It helped me so much, Deb. I love you so much.
Can you explain what ESP is for
ESP is Executive Success Program, which is
in NXIVM.
In NXIVM.
Great.
It's one of the sub-programs of the NXIVM umbrella. There's many programs that they created, of course, because there's never-ending problems to solve.
All very expensive.
Exactly. And so you always keep growing, which is the truth, but it also can, lead you to this vicious cycle of, well, you're never good. You're never good.
It's never good enough.
You're never good enough.
Always a carrot in front of you.
Exactly. And there's you never complete. Like, but now I think, like, well, complete is such a Scientology word. But I feel like that's the perfect word, because the realization is to, like, well, I have my shit, but I'm also okay. And now it's how to work with that. Like every human being on this earth. Like, But anyway, so my friend was really convincing me in the sense of, like, this is going to help you, Deb. And it took him like many months, because I was very resistant, especially because of the money. It's like, what, $3,000? I'm already struggling to even pay my rent. Like now I'm supposed to come up with $3,000 for somebody that I don't even know. But I was, like I said, I was in a very emotional place and very down and powerless. And I just wanted a light at the end of the tunnel, to be honest with you. So, and the way I think what really gave me hope was because Mark Vicente, who did The Vow on HBO, he was the one to talk to me right one day before their new intensive started here, actually really close here to Pico and Olympic.
Oh, really?
Really close. It's so funny. Like I was driving here and I was thinking about that. I was like, wow, this is really close to the first startup day that I did. But the night before, Mark talked to me at 10 p.m. or somewhat in my car, in my shitty car. Like, I remember so bad in my shitty car. And I couldn't believe he was listening to me. I know that sounds really sad, but I felt heard and I felt understood. Yeah. And I do believe he meant it. I don't believe Mark was acting or anything.
His intentions were pure at that time.
Yes.
I believe you.
Yeah, I felt like that. And I felt like also a male figure. Like I was alone. And I felt like knowing as a young woman, not having the strength in yourself yet, you lean on male figures. I did.
Right.
And I felt very nurtured and heard. And so I was like, okay, let's give it a go. And I told him, like, listen, I don't have $3,000. And he's like, okay, you can come and do the startup day and just pay monthly and then come monthly. So I was like, okay. So the $3,000 dropped to $300 a month.
Right.
So, of course, that's
was
part of it. I was
like,
well, what's my excuse at this point? And I felt like, well, I don't want to give up on myself. I really want to grow. There's got to be something I can do.
Right.
And I don't want to move back. I really didn't want to move back at that point. I was not over what happened with my parents.
Right.
So I was like stuck in this corner of like, it felt like, at least to me, obviously, it's all an internal perception of me being stuck in a corner. And so I said yes, and I went to the startup day, and Sarah Edmondson, also from The Vow, she did the startup day with me, and it was weird because I wasn't really paying attention too much, and at the same time, a lot of things triggered me. It was a weird in-between because we started doing the ESP handshake, which has to do with hierarchy, and who's already more ahead on their journey and who knows more. So their hand is above mine. And then they asked me, well, were you triggered by that? And I was like, yes, because I don't want anybody above me.
Right.
And so it was an interesting mix between, well, I already am triggered by this, but I'd ignored it because I think I just felt like, oh my God, I can
you can just
breathe out
and
just these people are going to help me.
Be transparent.
Yes.
Right.
And so that's really how it started.
Wow.
Yeah. And Mark, I mean, obviously I was very moved, like, wow, this stranger is listening to me. And he also is a movie a filmmaker. Sorry,
Right.
he's also a filmmaker, and I love that. And I watched What the Bleep Do We Know when I was 20.
Right.
So for me, I was like, oh my God, I'm meeting Mark. You know, he
Yeah.
had no idea about that. But for me, it was like, wow, I'm meeting this person who made this movie that really had an impact on me when I was in Europe. So coming together, like these timelines of us meeting, it was I'm a spiritual person. For me, it's like, oh my God, that means something.
Right.
Yeah, because I really liked his movie.
So how long were you involved?
Not that long, only 2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was more towards the end. I was obviously towards the end.
Right.
And yeah, some stuff that started happening towards the end, I was very like, hold on, I did not sign up for this. So
Right.
it was very
and that's, I think, might be interesting to kind of catalog, you know, concisely as best as possible, but the evolution of how you get more involved, you know, because, you know, we talked about it a little bit off camera. It's always important to talk about 2.5 years. There's still reasons why you stay. So there's certain things that are working, right?
Yeah.
And then there's always things that aren't working, and eventually there's a balance where the not working starts to take over, and you know, and then we find our way out. But I think it's important to kind of talk about that kind of spectrum of what was working for you and what wasn't, and then what kind of leads up to the point where you're like, you know, and then how that happens, you know, when you decide to take off. Or how so yeah, take us through that kind of journey for you.
Okay, so I started on a monthly program, meaning we had class twice a week in Venice and in Santa Monica, and I really liked the community.
Right.
I really liked meeting with people twice a week, structure, because at the point I had no structure. I was trying to just pay my bills. I didn't know what I was going to do with my acting. I was really disillusioned because it took me a lot to move here. I was very angry and frustrated about that, to be honest. I was like, well, I invested all these things, and now you're stranded here to just become a waitress. Nothing against that, but that's not why I worked my ass off.
Sure.
The truth,
Right.
And I know a lot of people feel this way. So I liked the structure it gave me. I knew, like, okay, Tuesday and Thursday, or when was it, Monday and Wednesday? Sometimes we switched it. We're gonna meet. And also, I really appreciated everybody was really real, like about this is what I like and this is what I'm struggling with, and especially in LA. I was like, oh my God, it's like
realness,
refreshing.
Yes,
Refreshing.
Real is rare. Real is
Right.
rare. Like that's how I feel, and my heart just was like, oh, I'm not the only one who's fucked up. Okay, there's other people.
Right, we all are.
Exactly, and but it's not a big deal. It was like, yeah, I did that too, and so because of that lightness, I was like, we could actually connect deeper for the fun stuff too.
Sure.
Yes.
Which was beautiful. And I
Yes.
loved it. And I really liked that we were talking philosophically, spiritually. I mean, for me, I heard it through a spiritual lens, even
Yes.
though ESP is not a spiritual program.
Right.
But certain things they said, I heard it through my spiritual understanding. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like for me, it was really helpful.
Right.
And I loved that we were able to just be so honest about everything. And people who want to go somewhere and create something true to themselves, I felt like.
Right.
So I really appreciated it. And the classes, I mean, I was mentally stimulating, again, because I felt like I wasn't stimulated in that time for such a long time, just, you know, doing a day job, paying bills.
Yeah.
It was so dull and boring and not what I thought it was going to do in LA. Really not. Like,
Not the original vision. Yeah.
So it's really like a crumbling, like a shattering of the illusion what you think LA was going to be. And I know that's very common, especially in the comedy scene and stand-up comedy scene. Like a lot of people talk about that. And I appreciated the honesty. And also there were a lot of people who were actually working. Like Mark was a filmmaker. There were a lot of actors that I met that are actually working. So I felt inspired to be around these people and grateful and somewhat honored in a weird way. Now I don't feel this way anymore, but obviously I still felt like, well, they know something that I don't know. So I can learn. And
Something's working for them.
Yeah.
Let me find out what it is.
Exactly.
Yes.
And just having guidance. I wanted guidance. Like, you know, when you go, there's a scene, like in a movie, she goes and confesses and she says, just tell me what to do. Just tell me. She breaks down in confessional booth and she just tells him, the priest, like, tell me what to do. And I think that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Just somebody tell me what to do and then it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Obviously, nobody can do that for you. And a lot of the classes were really good. I mean, to be honest, communication tools are really great. Listening tools are really great. And also being able to slow down the process of a trigger. Because I was so triggered and I didn't want this internal chatter anymore. And oh my God, and I wanted to be in my power that I also knew that I had inherently somewhere that we all have. And I just wanted to connect to that. And so slowing down, and that was part of the EM, exploration of meaning. That's a, how do you say that? Not a program, a system. How do you
process?
A process, perfect. A process how to break down a trigger. It really helped me because it was like, it's okay. You can feel it and you're not going to die.
Right.
And that is something that I will always be grateful forever to ESP.
You know, I mean, when I was watching, I remember the first episode of The Vow, they did a really great job about, you know, where I'm like, God, you know, I've been in a cult, but this sounds pretty cool. I kind of want to take that test.
Right.
You know, it's like, but I think that's so important to tell the story that way, that you know, you're not a loony person who's being attracted to a bunch of other loony people. It feels very grounded. It feels like there's something really good happening.
Yes.
A lot of very good. I mean, most of the information most cults use is like very legitimate scriptures and, you know, the very legitimate facts and things. And of course, I find that once you've kind of identified someone as a truth teller on some level, then you just say, oh, well, I'll just trust whatever they say. And that's where you kind of start to go down the rabbit hole. But it doesn't happen because they're firing a ton of bullshit at you. Normally there's a lot of valid stuff coming at you. You're going,
it's always laced with the truth.
Yeah.
Always.
So it's really fascinating to hear, because that's what I thought was great about that entry point into that you know, show, was like, oh, this is a good way to tell the story.
Yeah. EMs are very powerful, and they did help me.
Yeah,
they did. Like, you know, I still sometimes know the process, and I do it to myself, like, because I just done it so much that I know how to slow down, and it really helps you. Like, people, like I watch people now when I go, they're so triggered, and to stay in a calm space and just watch yourself having an emotion is a very powerful place to be, because otherwise you just act upon emotion. You're reactive. You're running around like a hamster. And that is not what I want in my life. That's tiring. It's a tiring rat race. Right. And so that I will always be grateful for it.
Always. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's such an important part of the recovery process, is taking the good from it all and realizing that there are some things that you really learned that were valuable. And, you know, I feel the same way. But there's always a point where the cracks start becoming, you know, in the veneer, and I'm kind of curious how
they turn into earthquakes. The cracks you can no longer avoid. You know, when
I don't know, I'm laughing so much about it now, but it's weird. It's like looking back now, I'm like, whoa. Yeah. But the good thing is, and I think that's what really saved me, for the better word. Like, I've always been very spiritual. I just knew I'm a spirit on this earth. I've been here before. Right. This is not like the first time. And I gotta go back. They always said, well, that's not something that you can prove factually, or there is no data to back it up. Like, there's no almost scientific data, because ESP is very built on repeatable data. Can you do something and repeat it again and again? That means you're over your issue, which is in theory true, but they wanted me to lose my intuition. They were like, well, how do you
lose your intuition?
Well, they didn't say it like that, but when I was going through something, and I would describe to my coach, well, this and this, what's going on, I think I should do this and this. She's like, well, how do you know? It's like, well, my intuition is telling me this. She's like, well, but that's not something that you can factually prove with data, and you cannot repeat it. And I was like, well, in my opinion, that's not true, because I've done it before. And B, I had a strong boundary of I'm never going to give up. I'm going to go back. I had a very strong boundary of never giving up my intuition. I was like, no, this is where it ends for me. I am not giving up my spirituality. I'm here. I'm paying. What the fuck? Like, I am paying. Like, why do you tell me what to do? Like, and so they would always tell me, well, you're so defiant. That's their word to start to break you. If you ask me things that were starting to become weird, a lot of feedback. So they're big on feedback. Right. Yeah. They introduced this model, like, can I give you feedback, Michelle? And then you have to say, like, yes or no. Obviously, you can consent to it, because they were big about consent in a weird way. Right. When it wasn't.
Well, no, it's like feigned informed consent. It's like we're saying the words, but we're not actually doing that.
No,
right?
exactly.
Sure. Yeah.
So the feedback was a lot like, well, you're so defined, and that's why you're not having ABC in your life.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like I grew up in a very, very controlled household, and I was like, no, I'm not. I fled that place, so I'm not going back to another place that will control me. And so I was like, fine, you can call me defiant all you want. I don't care. I'm going to come back for the classes and take what I need and everything. And people really liked me. You know, they were not mean. The most mean stuff that I've experienced was at V Week, which is basically a summer camp where we all go to upstate New York to Lake George and celebrate Keith's birthday for 10 days. And
what does the V stand for?
Vanguard, which is
his name.
His title. His
title that he wants to be addressed
V Week.
with.
Yeah.
And
Good Lord.
So the defiance was one thing that really started to push me away. And then also the fact that they kept saying, well, if you don't join the coach path, which is becoming a coach in ESP, you will not get over ABC. And I was like, so you're telling me that everybody else in the world who is not doing the coach path is never going to get over to use your theory. I'm going to, I'm going to.
And what did they say to that?
They didn't say anything because what are you going to say to that? They know, like, there's no, it's like a lawyer. I'm trying to corner them. Like, okay, you want to prove your statement? We're going to prove it.
All right.
It's a false
prove
premise.
It. Exactly. So show me the evidence.
Right.
And it's all on data, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I started to use the
That
weapons against them. I was like, okay,
good for you.
You want the data? Fine. So that was one thing I felt very cornered. Like, why? I don't want to be a coach. And then it would say, well, we can't tell you this and this about the program.
So now they're withholding information.
Now they're withholding, exactly, perfectly worded. They're like, well, we can't help you with this issue because if you were going to take this class or this coach path, then we could look at that.
Wow.
And I was like
Scientology. You were climbing their bridge.
I know. Yeah. And if you go to conventional therapy, that's not how a therapist would say it to you.
Right.
Like, well, no, we cannot talk about this yet because of, you haven't paid me this much money.
You haven't come to it.
Exactly. You haven't paid this much money.
On episode 21, once you've been here, then we'll get to
it wasn't an organic, what I feel like an organic healing journey of like, well, now I want to go here. Now, the whole point is to become free.
Right.
Isn't it why we're doing all of this? To become internally free and to be happy. And I felt like more and more it was closing in. And Week, again, was an eye-opener because I was... Again, I did not have the money to go, but then they're like, well, if you can do photography, then you can come for free. And it was also, again, Mark who convinced me. So Mark and I had a very tight bond. I loved Mark very much. I still love Mark. I still love him. It's weird. We're not talking. We're not in contact, but I really feel for him. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And
listen, he's a victim in this as well.
Yeah, he is. He is. Yeah. Absolutely. He was Keith's best friend.
Yeah.
It's surreal. So anyway, every week I was a photographer, and that gave me a position of being a fly on the wall because basically they made me shoot 6 hours a day, which that's another point. They always were big on like, well, we're going to do a fair exchange. They were teaching us fair exchanges in the cult. So if I give you this, how much value does it have, and how much are you going to give in return? So they calculated 6 hours a day of photography plus editing of how many hours was an equal to a $2,500 that we would have cost. And I was like, no, because honestly, and they gave me a shitty room, which pissed me off. It was disgusting. It was cold. And there was a bathroom on the floor. So I went to them. I was like, this is not a fair exchange. Because I worked as a photographer at that time for a company, and I made like $1,000 a day.
Right.
So you're telling me $2,500 for 10 days, and I don't even have my own bathroom, because I asked them, can I be in a better hotel, in a better room? And they're like, no, you're defiant. And I was like, no, this is not a fair exchange, and I will not edit any photos. I will shoot. I'm not editing. We were a team of photographers. Everybody else at the end of the day, till in the wee hours, were editing. And I just was like, good night. Good night, everybody. I'm going to my room.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And I have my own room, thank God.
Yeah.
Because I did not want to share with a stranger. I don't care, just because you're an ESP doesn't mean you're my buddy.
Right.
sorry. Like,
Yeah.
so week, a lot of people got sick, which is really weird. I did not get sick like that. Like, people are vomiting. I don't know. It was like, now I'm thinking like, did somebody put something in the food? I don't know. I went in my head. I went somewhere.
Yeah.
But I had a little fever. That was it. And they would not back off. They would come to my door like, you got to shoot. Are you feeling better? This is not a fair exchange. I'm like, you know what?
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
I just did not open the door. It's like, no, I'm not feeling better. And so week was a big turning point. I was when Nancy yelled at me in front of everybody. I met her the first time in person.
Wow.
And
she teed off on you?
Yeah, because I had a question. We had a Jeunesse meeting, which is the women-only meeting where we talk about what it means to be a woman and sexuality and how to interact with men and all that stuff and how to be an empowered woman. And I asked her something about, well, I always have a hard time with men. And I don't recall the exact question, but it was more along the lines of like, well, I have a hard time dating and it's not working. And she's like, yeah, because you're a big middle finger walking around in front of everybody. That was my first interaction. She's never met me. She's never talked to me. But of course, I know things, go up the lines behind.
Right. She's heard
behind your back.
Yes.
And because you're so defiant.
Yes.
Yeah, she's gotten the defiant.
And then she also came, but then it was weird. She came to me after. She's like, well, if you ever want to talk, here's my number. So I got her number privately very quickly. Mm-hmm. So those were things. So I wanted to go home, actually. I asked a couple people, can you drive me to the train station? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And nobody drove me. And it was like outside of, upstate New York.
Right.
There's no public transportation.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to stay. And I just watched. I felt like it was really a blessing to be a photographer because I was just sitting there like, what is going on? This is not, because you're forced to have a distance when you're a photographer. You're an observer immediately, and you see people differently. You see their behavior, and they forget about you because it was week. So I was able to really observe people.
You become somewhat anonymous in that position with the camera separating you from them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I was not allowed to keep any photos, even though they're beautiful. I had to give them away and sign that I don't have them. I was allowed to post them, which was another thing. I'm like, why are we here then? Why am I here taking photos just for you? Like, it was really weird. And I mean, there are other things that as an Italian, the food was disgusting. I was like, I'm working for nothing.
Right.
And then there was a group shot that we did at the end of the week, and there was a high ladder, you had to go all the way up, and nobody was securing the ladder. They're like, okay, Deb, go up, take the photo. I was like, I'm not going up if somebody is not securing the ladder. I'm not doing this. And they're like, oh, you're so defiant. And then 3 people came and gave me feedback. It's like, so you want me to risk my safety for a stupid group photo? I'm not doing it. So it was a lot of pushback, and then a lot of men would hit on me too in the week. It was really interesting. And I was seeing a guy, but not really. It doesn't matter. I was just not into anybody.
Yeah.
And they were too nice for me. I guess I was that was the bad boy phase. So I had a bad boy boyfriend at home in LA. So which is weird. He kind of protected me from going into a relationship with those people. But a lot of men wanted to go on walks with me. Do you want to go on walks in the woods? And I was like, no, thank you.
None of that sounds good.
My mama told me otherwise.
Little Red Riding Hood.
Strange men.
Yeah, with and they tried to convince me to. A lot of times they tried to enroll me in more programs during the week, like Jeunesse and the men and women's program and this program. And it was weird. The men were really.
So how far in your journey is that the V week?
The V week was 2 years in.
2 years in. Okay, so half a year later, you're kind of...
No, okay, so 2 years in, and then in V week really gave me a break. That's August, yes. Yeah. And then in 2018, is it 17 or 18? I don't know the years, when I got pitched for DOS.
Right.
So that's half a year in between. Yeah.
Oh, so
back up.
You got pitched.
Yeah. I was like, what?
Yeah. But that's V week was a big eye opener just to answer when you asked me.
So that put you kind of at you were kind of on the fence at that point. You kind of
I came back to LA and I immediately told them I don't want to do ESP anymore, and so because I don't feel like it's helping me, because I was still not working as an actor, as a writer. I still had no money, and I still felt like, well, I feel a little bit better, but nothing really substantial is happening. And after this Wee Week experience, where else I met Keith, that's another turning point. I met Keith at Wee Week, and I had a private conversation with him. Like, you're even closer than that. Like,
right.
It was like,
yeah, right.
No, even closer. Like, his face was like here.
Right.
Didn't he get up close to everybody and kiss them on the lips?
Yeah, that's another thing which I photographed a lot. Yeah. I never did this. I was like, I'm not gonna. I didn't kiss anybody.
Yeah.
At Wee Week. But that conversation with Keith was also a part where it was weird because there was a volleyball game that they always play in Albany, and I was staying 2 days extra with my friend. After Wee Week, and I was sitting there. It was really cold, and just watching them play. I didn't want to play, and Keith stops the game, and he comes over to me, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, you're so lucky! Oh my God, he's talking to you.
You're so lucky!"
Like this admiration.
Yeah.
And so he talked to me, and we talked about. He told him what I do, and he's like, "Are you cold? Are you feeling okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." And it was very intimate and close. Like, and also, I have to say, intimate, it's a weird word to choose, but it was. It was like he looked me straight in the eyes.
Right.
I'll never forget, I just looked at him.
Yeah.
And it's a moment of like, there was nothing else going on. I just looked at him.
Right.
Right.
And we started talking about, I was taking photos of breastfeeding women at the time. And so we obviously, which led to sex. Like, breastfeeding, I don't know, just connects to sex quickly. And we talked about sex and power. And he told me to read a certain book. And then he said, well, if you want, we can start talking privately. I would love, to talk about this with you and explore this with you. And I was like, yeah, sure. And then I left and I went to bed. And that night I woke up and I just cried. And all I was thinking, Keith was in my head. All I kept thinking about was him. And I just cried. And I didn't understand why, because he didn't do anything to me in that moment. And then he added me on Facebook and he started poking me. And he's like, do you want to set up time? And I said, yes. But internally I felt no.
Right.
I just said yes. But then we never did it.
Right.
Yeah.
I never followed through with it at all. So I went back to LA and I told them done with ESP, and they're like, well, you should take Origins because Origin is a more emotional program, would help you more. I was like, fine, I'll try it. I did that. And I was also in the Jeunesse group at the same time, which is the women's group we would meet once a week.
Right.
And that's another eye-opener because in that class, I mean, everything's blamed on the woman. Everything. And how women were described were not the women I grew up with. Wow. Women are lazy. Women are princesses. Women want everything for free. Women don't work. Women are parasites. Women are abusive. And I was like, this is not my upbringing. Yes, my mom was abusive.
Did you push back?
I pushed back, and they did not like that. Like, well, just try it on. This is another word. Just try it on. Try it on. And I was... in the class with a friend of mine, and she's a very strong feminist lesbian woman, and she also pushed back. So I was like so thankful she was sitting right next to me. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Because yes, my mom was abusive towards me, but she was a hard worker. She was not somebody who just was a princess.
Right.
We had a hard time. Like, I helped her clean as a kid. This is not... Like, I was like, how can you say this about my mother? You do not get to say this about my mom.
Right.
And I'm not going to back down. This is my family. Even though, it was fucked up. I'm not doing this. This is where my line is. I still love them. And trying to break down the family thing, it was really like a sign, right?
Most cults do that.
It's textbook.
Yeah, it is textbook.
Yeah, it is. So those things. And then, I took Origins for like 3 more months. And then... in April, that time next year, I was, my coach at the time pitched me for DOS, at the beach in Malibu.
Right.
Should I talk about that?
Yes, if you like.
Please.
Yeah.
Well,
because this is all leading to you eventually exiting, right?
Yes. I was done with ESP, and at that time I also was done with Jeunesse and done with Origins. So I was kind of like leaving everything.
Right.
And that weekend, I was, my neighbor, who I've never done anything with, really literally sends me texts and comes to my door like, you want to be fucked hard at 2 a.m.? And I was terrified.
Right.
Yeah.
Terrified. Called the police. They didn't do anything. Because like, well, nothing happened. I was like, great. Nobody helped again. Like, which is a bad,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
it's just not how it should work. So the next day I called my coach at the time and I told her, like, this is what happened. I'm really scared. Can I stay with you? She's like, perfect. I'm going to come into town anyway. Great. Let's meet in the beach. And I was like, okay. So I'll go to Malibu, we'll go to the beach. And she starts pitching me about this amazing new women's group. And she starts asking me, like, how are you doing? Are you achieving your goals? I have this new group. I can't tell you what it is. It's a very special group. And you would be perfect for it. We need strong women like you, outspoken women like you. And I was like, well, who are these women? And she said, well, I can't tell you. I was like, well, are they from NXIVM? Are they from ESP? And they're like, no, well, I can't tell you. I was like, well, and she's like, well, I can tell you if you sign something and you give me something damaging on yourself. So you would never speak about this group, because if I were to speak about this group, men would want to try to destroy it.
Right.
We need to protect this group from men, from evil men.
Right.
And so she asked me for collateral, basically, and to sign something. And I just was like, I just looked at her. And from that moment on, she never looked me in the eyes again. She just kept looking down. And I just looked at her and I knew, like, I was as if somebody was talking to me, like from above. Like it just came through. And it kept saying, she's lying.
Right.
She's lying. It's dark. She's lying.
Wow.
And I was like, fine, and I just kept looking at her. I was like, if she doesn't look at me, I know she's lying.
Yeah.
And I just kept asking her, I was like, is Keith involved in this? I just straight up,
Wow.
shot her between the eyes. I was like,
good for you.
She's like, no. And I was like, well, who is? Because it sounds really dark and really bad, and I don't want to do it. I'm not signing anything. But I was still spending the night with her because I was, again, this just shows you, I was in a scary position, in a vulnerable position, powerless position because of my neighbor. And then yet they come in as a savior, but then they try to pitch me for something even worse. That was really hurtful, to be honest. Never got an apology for that, by the way, from her. Never. Because this woman also, you have to understand, was my coach for 2 years. She knows the most intimate things of me, about me.
Right.
So it's really still like, I'm not over it, obviously. I'm moved by that.
Right.
I'm just like, wow, okay. But besides that, so I stayed with her, and she kept talking about Keith and Keith. And Keith is great. And Keith is amazing. We have to be so grateful to Keith. And I was like, what is all this Keith talk? And then at night, I went to bed. She insisted on sleeping in the same bed, even though I told her, like, I'm okay, I can sleep on the couch.
Right.
Yet she insisted, which felt to me physically not comfortable to be so close in my space. And it's a queen bed. I'm a tall woman. Like, I was like, I don't want to do this. But I did it anyway. And the whole night she was texting. And she also lost a lot of weight at that time. And she was cleaning excessively. I was like, what? And it was clean. It was clean. I was like, why are you cleaning? And then the next morning I go to the bathroom and her phone was laying on the sink open with the text messages open.
Oh, wow.
And I was washing my hands and then it's like, ding. And I just was like, I looked down, I was like, reflex. It's like, oh, there's a phone. And then I saw, while I was washing my hands, I saw the text to Lauren Salzman, where my coach replied to her, I love you, my master. And I was like, what is this, Lauren? And I know Lauren because I met Lauren at V-Week. And Lauren is very high up in ESP. She was one of the main coaches, main sales woman. And high ranking. You know? And so, and I've met Lauren. I've talked to Lauren. So I was weird. I was like, what do you mean I love you, my master? And I just, for some reason, like in my head, I started to like connect what she told me yesterday about the pitch to this, to other things that I felt like, well, something's off. And I got really cold.
Wow.
My body, I like a shiver. I was like, oh, this is really not good.
Yeah.
So I dropped her off at the airport. She said, can you drive me to the airport? And I immediately called my friend, two friends, Naomi, who was in Seduced, and somebody else. I don't want to name her name because she doesn't want to be named. I called her and I told her like what happened. And I said, I'm really scared. This is what she asked me. I don't know what it is. And it's just bad. And then Bonnie at the time was going out, leaving ESP. And I talked to Bonnie, and she tried to convince me to talk to Mark because he was on the fence. And I was like, listen, this is what happened, and I'm scared. So Mark really listened to me. And I told him, please don't tell Keith that I told you. But, Mark, obviously, now that we all saw the vow, he went after it anyway, and everything came out. And I told my friends, and they told Katheryne, so we can reach India, because that was the first thought. Like, what about India?
Yeah.
And so that's when I was obviously done after this weird pitch and weird night with her.
And seeing the text.
And seeing the text. And the text was just,
So at that point, did you kind of stop communication with them?
Absolutely. And I felt bad for a long time. I felt guilty, but I cut out everybody immediately.
Wow.
I just blocked everybody. Obviously,
good for you.
Naomi, I stayed in touch with her, and Mark and Bonnie, yes, of course, but we were all trying to figure out what's going on. But everybody else, I just cut ties right away. I blocked them. I moved. I moved to a different place.
So
I was very I'm done.
Oh, I can imagine. So was there any a point that you remember where kind of the cult word comes up and recognizing that this is something kind of, because I know for me it took, I left and it took almost 2 years.
Accepting that we were in cults.
No, it's true, because I did make a joke about that in my stand-up routine when I wrote it. I was like, I'm not in a cult. We were just hanging out and reciting, 12 rules of the program. I was just trying. I really did not want to.
Of course.
Acknowledge.
It's a scary word. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a scary word, and it's a scary word to even talk with others about, because it's such a triggering word, because we all have such strong imagery from what the media's painted, because it sometimes feels like a hole you got to dig out of when you use that word. But, that's kind of what it is. And so it's tough to, so do you remember kind of when you swallowed that pill, or?
I think it was when I was living in the canyon, and because living in the canyon gave me a lot of alone time with nature. And I was like, wow, this was not what I thought it was. Really not.
About how long was that?
About it. After, it took me a year and a half.
Right.
Were you reading anything around that subject matter or anything at that point, or?
No.
Okay.
I really took a break, and then until I got approached for the documentary.
Seduced?
Yeah, Seduced. Yeah. I was very...
Oh, so you were really early on in your kind of recovery process and they even approached you. Wow.
Yes. And I haven't really looked at it. I think I just kind of shoved it on the carpet. And also I was in the middle of applying for my green card, which is really hard if you do it the legal way. So I was very busy with survival.
Right.
And then when we started shooting at the documentary, I was kind of forced, and that's why I actually did it. I was like, I'm going to take this on as a mirror to myself and healing.
Yeah.
And obviously it's going to help somebody else too, but I really need to be honest with myself and look at this if I want to move on from it. And that's what I did. And it really dawned on me in the courtroom, I have to say, when I was in Brooklyn, because I was going to the trial,
For Keith?
Yes.
Yeah. Any others? What about for Allison? Or
no, only Keith. Well, the trial was 6.5 weeks. I saw about a total of 3 because we flew back and forth.
Yeah.
And the way the lawyer really explained to the jury how a cultic experience works and indoctrination, it just really hit me then and there that ESP was this and my upbringing was this. Wow. So I repeated a pattern because my upbringing was a mini cult
relationship.
Yes, and a mini cult-like experience.
Right.
All just with one person.
Right.
All that what they wanted. I had to follow all the rules, and I was physically abused, emotionally abused, beaten. So it's a cultic experience. It was I was just sitting there. I was like, oh my God, because she's going at him, going at Keith. And it was a moment inside of me. It was like, wow, I repeated the same. No wonder I attracted this, because it's a repetition of what happened to me as a kid.
Yeah.
And then I broke down crying out and left the courtroom.
No, but it's such a moment of awakening, because it's like anything I always say, until you get the diagnosis, you can't get the medicine. So
Yes.
as the more horrible part is the limbo, where you're like, what was this? How can I define it? How can I relate it to someone else? And even though it's a rough word, it becomes a turning point to say, okay.
Yes.
And then you can research, what those things are and
I
how
hate
they
limbo.
work. Yeah.
Now when things come up, I want to look at them. Like, I don't want to waste my time. It's really,
Right.
I think pushing things away or issues away is worse than looking at them, even if it's uncomfortable. Because it's like a boxing match. Like you're fighting against yourself. Like you have to look at it.
Yeah.
Because the fight is going on.
Well, yeah. And that's why I'd love to hear kind of, since then, kind of your journey with the recovery and kind of the lessons learned in that process. Because I've always said to everyone, cult life was pretty shitty, but the aftermath is much tougher as far as taking on that mantle of that experience. You've got a lot of friends and family potentially looking around you going, what the fuck happened? That you have to try to find a way to talk to them about it while you're still trying to process your own experience. It's a challenging time. I think it's much tougher than actually the actual experience of being in the cult, because it's pretty kind of set in, like, you were defiant, God bless you. But I tried to be a real loyal cult member, and being back on my own, I was like, who am I? What am I? What do I really feel about things? What do I really want to do?
What do I believe in?
So I'm kind of curious what your journey's been.
I mean, I have the same feelings. Like, who am I? What do I really care about? I mean, after we shot the documentary, I really took time just to be alone, like a lot of alone time. That's part of the recovery, and being okay with that, and being okay with all that you think and that you feel, but not taking it as your truth. It's very important to just observe and not get lured in. I call it the theater of thoughts because they're like, oh, look at this and look at that. Like they're running around on stage and just like they all have a role to play and they go crazy. And I feel like, that's how I feel. I'm actually going to write this as a show, I think.
You should.
As a theater, as a play, because they're just going crazy. And I knew, like, well, if I believe them, that's what led me into ESP.
Right.
Believing all this crap. So it didn't work.
Right.
The recovery process, I had therapy with somebody that I really liked. She's not a traditional therapist. So that really helped. I did that on a weekly basis. And a lot of journaling and a lot of honesty, like breaking down my illusions. Why did I choose what I chose? And with my family, it was really hard because they don't really want to talk about it.
No, I know
very few people wanted to talk about it.
Right.
Because they're scared. I don't know. Like they're
that's common. They don't know what to say or what to do or how to feel.
And that's where the cult survivor community helps out. Like if you can meet other people, it doesn't have to be the same group. I mean, it's great if it's the same group, but other people have kind of, we've become good friends, because it's kind of, they follow the same methodology.
And I think actually talking about it with my family would bring up their own stuff.
Right.
And
like you said,
that they really don't want to
Right.
confront. And I know that, so I'm okay with it. Like that's their journey. I cannot force them on their journey.
Right.
It's mine. And then a lot of art, like I said, I started painting, which is amazing, and I really like it.
That's great.
And in the painting too, like I can see like where I don't want to trust my intuition, and to really go through that and just use it as a mirror. I don't know. I mean, what else do I do? Work out. I box. I started boxing, which I think is very important. Yeah.
So therapeutic.
So, right? So good. And
I didn't realize how, I sobbed after my first lesson because it was like cathartic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And I just appreciate my teacher so much. He's amazing. And he really helps me to get back into my body. I think a big part of the healing process is to feel your body and to be back in your body. And I think that's also why a lot of people have a lot of issues, because they don't want to feel their body and what's coming up. But now I know there's no way around it. You're in the body.
One of the most famous books is The Body Remembers the Score. And it's all about, I went back to the place because I escaped from my group, and I literally had to go in the middle of the night. And I went back to that exact piece of property. The compound we had is now burned and gone, but I went to the precipice of where I had to run down the hill and stay off the road and go a mile and a half to find the cab. And this is 20 years later, I stood there and I felt like I was going through it again in that moment. And I went back there 3 days in a row, but the third day I stopped feeling it. But yeah, the body does remember the story. Trauma goes right in there.
Right.
Yeah.
And to feel it. Because they say like when an animal, for example, gets hit, it shakes because it's trying to shake out the trauma out of the body.
Right.
And I feel like really doing body work is very important for the healing.
Yeah.
And learning, your self-worth.
Yeah.
Really learning about your self-worth, because I think that's why I and a lot of people get into any kind of abusive thing, because we forget to set boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to communicate and to practice that, which is very uncomfortable to go out and practice boundaries because I was so afraid, nobody's going to like me or people are going to leave. And I was like, you know what? If they leave, if I set a boundary, then they're going to leave.
Right.
It's good if they leave.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good litmus test, right? I mean, it's the same way I feel about just owning my story. If I feel a need to tell the story and someone kind of judges me or whatever, I'm like, well, I don't need that person in my life. Because most people are really receptive and really kind. And generally, I even find some people, because I'm this person talking about this crazy cultic experience, it's like, well, actually, I've got something I've never talked about that I now feel comfortable to tell them. And we have these incredible conversations because someone feels safe now. It's like, well, if you're talking about that, I can tell you about this. I've never told anyone. And so it's been a wonderful journey in that sense, but it takes time.
It takes time.
And you're in the earlier parts of it now. But you're doing some great things. And the fact that you're here and talking about it, the fact you went on a program, I mean, it's nothing's going to change if everyone stays silent.
Exactly.
Right. But if we talk, there's a good chance things can change. And
I just want to show people oh my God, why do we have to walk around so perfect? I'm over it. I'm done.
Right. We're human.
Exactly. It's not a big deal.
We're here for the ride.
You're not less or less worthy or less lovable or whatever. Some people are going to vibe with you. Some people are not. But that's what it is. I am done running after approval. I'm done. I'm exhausted. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm done. I'm just over it. That's the PSA. I'm over it. I'm just...
Which is probably one of the things you can cherry pick as so beautiful from the experience.
Yeah.
Because it's fast forwarding you to that place.
It is.
Right?
And I think it's a common issue. The fear of abandonment, the fear of not being liked. How many times do we do things?
People-pleasing, right?
People-pleasing.
People-pleasing.
Do we do things in society? I mean, look at social media. Do we do things to please, to be liked? But you're living in an illusion. Just be yourself and the right people will like you. The people who are meant to be with you will like you.
Will be there.
And that's it.
But it's such a gift that you have now that you earned because you stood up, you left. Now you get to stand in that place of I'm enough. Yeah. And it's freedom. Yeah. It's so much freedom. It took me, I was much older than you before I got to that place, to where, excuse me, to where that felt good. Yeah. Where it felt good to say fuck you or no or I don't want to do that. Yeah. Before, sorry guys. Take a step. Before, I just would never do that.
I know.
I didn't want to hurt someone's feelings or to say the wrong thing.
I don't want to be dismissed
or be dismissed or not liked or not considered for that particular.
Especially in the industry. We're working. Sure. Oh my God. And I mean, no. Yeah, I get it. And I think that's going back to the cultic experience, if you want to say so, everybody has a cultic experience because you are running around wanting to please and prove. So you're liked.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I just want to tell people, you're doing this to yourself. And that's your own, cult-like experience with these rules in your own being, in your own head. And it's exhausting. And it's not even truthful. What do you really want? Just because you got this from a TV show or from the media or from books that you grew up with. What? I started to ask myself questions who am I really like? Because we get so influenced from a baby, from everything, and really going back to nature and what do I really like, regardless of all these influences that have been going on, and we're so influenced by the screen, all of us.
Oh yeah.
And so that freedom of finding really myself, and it's still love acting, still love movies, but it's a different approach,
right?
And it's a different standard of what I'm willing to do,
right,
for for a part. I'm really clear on like no and yes, like which was good.
You took your power back.
Yeah.
That's just the best way to say it. You took your power back.
And it's a process too, because sometimes
we have to keep doing it. You have to keep taking it back.
You take some steps back.
You do.
You start to give away
no
here.
Doubt,
And it hurts like when I'm not truthful to myself and like I people please or I don't set up. There's my inside of me is like, no,
right?
Why?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. To me, that's the gift. Like, I love that about me now. And quite frankly, most people don't have that. They don't have the immediate emotional feedback where they can go, that doesn't feel good. Something's not right here. Like my emotional GPS is on point.
Yeah.
Something doesn't feel good. I'm like, oh, no.
And to trust it.
Yeah. And very quickly, I will readjust or reroute my GPS and go, I'm not going down that road. Most people, believe it or not, don't have that.
Because it's not taught.
It's not taught.
Who teaches? They teach you, no, be quiet. Shh, you don't want to upset anybody.
Right.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
You're not going to make it if you don't say this. Like, that's not life to me.
Right.
Like, I want to be free.
And you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm very excited to see where you go from here. And I mean, if there's anything we haven't covered, you want to kind of say we're kind of wrapping things up, I guess. But I've loved.
Why did you choose those lyrics?
Well,
for some reason, it made me think of you. Just knowing what I saw in Seduced. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I really like them.
The song's amazing. You got to listen to it.
I will. What is it called again?
The Troubles. I'm going to read it one more time to close. But as if you didn't know already, you are officially invited into our Survivor to Thriver group. We are now all Thrivers. I'll give you my phone number, email. As much
just
as
hanging out with real people. I mean, it's so much to
liberating. It's amazing.
I know. Thank you so much. Like it's that's what I wanted.
Yeah, right. No,
right.
No, that's what you looked for originally. I mean, it's
exactly.
I told a friend of mine from the group that I was in, I'm like, I finally feel like I'm doing what I signed up for.
Exactly.
Like, it took me this way. Yeah, I'm like
the backwards way.
Yes. Full circle.
Exactly.
What we all wanted to do was help people and express and thrive
and be authentic.
Right.
Yeah.
On that note, let me close out with these awesome lyrics, if my voice will let me get through it. Somebody stepped inside your soul. Somebody stepped inside your soul. Little by little, they robbed and stole till somebody else was in control. God knows it's not easy, taking on the shape of someone else's pain. God, now you can see me. I'm naked, but I'm not afraid. My body's sacred, and I'm not ashamed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hoyt, for having me.
As always, to our listeners, please guard your hearts and your minds. These belong to no one else except you. We'll see you next time.